If you're hiring an engineer, especially in another country, in another culture, you have to get incredible trust in a short amount of time that this individual can handle your code base with the treatment it deserves. This is your baby. This is your business if you're a SaaS startup. It's the core of the product. And I've heard nightmare stories, as maybe you heard too, of engineers mishandling the code. I had a story of a founder who worked with an engineer for 3 months to build their product. And on the third month, the engineer disappeared. The last they heard, this engineer was South Africa somewhere and would not give over the permissions of their code base. Later on, they found out that this engineer sold that code base to another company. So you have to be very careful about who you trust with your code. So how do you do that in such a short period of time during an interview? Let's get into it. So I have hired hundreds of engineers, both as a manager at Amazon, as well as in my own agency, as we've managed multiple engineering projects. And at this point, it's been hundreds of engineers. So I've gotten a little bit of insight on what to ask and how to separate fact from fluff. The fact is, as an ex-engineer, I'll tell you that a lot of engineers who aren't worth their salt will end up trying to hide behind vague technical details. You need an engineer first and foremost to be able to speak very clearly about their project. My philosophy is this: if they cannot explain it clearly, then they don't understand it clearly. And if you have an engineer that does not understand their code properly, they will not do the same thing for you. So the first thing that you should look out is communication ability. Beyond just the accent difference or the more surface level things, I want you to understand when you ask a question, are they understanding your question very clearly? Are they answering the wrong question when they respond? Are they asking clarifying questions to understand more deeply if they don't understand? And finally, when they answer, are they to the point in answering directly, or are they rambling and going off in all these different directions as well? So if their communication is not clear, you will not be able to work with them effectively. This is one of the biggest red flags with engineers, not even just abroad, but even locally as well in the US, if you're working in the US or native English speaking engineers. The fact is, a lot of engineers will not be able to effectively communicate their code base, what they did, how they did it, why they did it. But engineering and being able to communicate are not two separate skill sets. In fact, if you are a world-class engineer or a one percenter, you are not only able to implement, but able to translate that implementation into business terms so that the business stakeholders can understand. The biggest mistake a lot of hirers do is try to separate out this ability to communicate with ability to engineer. I think both these things are both absolutely crucial, and you should be looking out for very clear, effective communication from the get-go. All right, let's get into the more of the meat of the experience. What I like to do is, especially if you're a non-technical founder, is get into more scenario-based questions. The reality is, even if you probe for very, very in-depth technical questions, they're going to be answering in very broad and maybe complicated terms that's difficult to follow if you don't understand that tech stack very, very deeply. So what I like to do is go one level higher, talk about principles, talk about mindset, talk about scenarios. So for example, what did you do when the requirements were unclear? How did you handle ambiguity when you were receiving those requirements and didn't know what to do? Another question could be that when you were working with a feature and you realized that it was a lot more complex than you originally planned for, how did you handle that? Other questions would be that, let's say you were assigned a topic or a task and you didn't really understand that technology clearly. How did you handle it? Give me an example of the technology that you investigated and learned. Describe this technology to me. What does it do? How does it work? So these types of questions basically unravel a little bit of their mindset, and it'll tell you how deeply did they actually go into that topic. So long story short, if someone is bullshitting, right, you can tell by the level of detail in which they're willing to talk about it. So if they give you an answer, right, this basically opens up the door to go deeper and deeper into that topic, right? So if you find out these scenario-based questions about how are you handling ambiguity, well then what did you do after that? Then what did you do after that? What happened if you were late on a deliverable? How did you fix this going forward? So these types of things, right, in terms of how detailed they can go, not only validate their communication ability, but also validate their mindset and approach, which is totally technology agnostic. And it's very clear once you get into the weeds, are they actually telling the truth or not? The final thing you can do when hiring these engineers is to give trial projects. Give a small portion of the code, and if you have to pay them just a little bit of money to do that trial project, that's more worth it at the final round than trying to recover from it after the hire. You want to see how willing are they to onboard onto your systems and communicate with you and deliver effectively. Doing a small trial project as a final round, definitely not as a round that you would do early on, but let's say you filter down to just a few candidates and you need to make a final decision. At this point, it's really important to just get real life experience with them, working with trial projects and seeing how they work effectively. And a little bit of money investment here will work out for you much better in the long term, because now you're having a much more higher confidence in that this is the person that's right for your team. Another thing you can do is partner with a firm that knows how to do things, such as what we do for our technical interviews and hiring for remote teams is we put them through 5 technical rounds with our senior engineers. So not only are we doing everything that I just discussed, but we're really getting into the weeds of their implementations. We review their previous code and assign them child projects and see how they do there. And so together, once we fix all of those things, we have extremely high confidence that these guys know what they're doing. So if you need help with that, just drop a comment or DM me. I'm happy to help. I'll see you next time. Bye.
If you don't want to miss the next videos, make sure you subscribe to the channel and press the bell icon so you get notified of future uploads.